Radio. And oh my goodness, this is my birthday week. So if anybody wants to send me a birthday present, you can send it to my website. The address is on my on my website. I'm open to receiving. Anyway, I've got a really packed show tonight and a lot of things I want to share with you. I have at the bottom of the hour coming on Chad Meek, and we're going to talk about aliens and Rosewell and abductions and astrology and his new book called The Giant Rock. Now, I want to say, in honor of our fallen soldiers, I hereby call for the arrest of every draft-dodging, neoconservative chicken hawk who sent our brave kids out to fight for illegal wars for profit. Don't you think it's time? Well, I certainly do. Now, Detroit, oh my goodness, Detroit and Oklahoma City, and I'm going to bring up Detroit. And, Michigan has a soft spot for me because I'm from Michigan, from around the Detroit area. And when I saw that in the news that the Satanic Temple of the Detroit chapter is getting ready to unveil a controversial sculpture in Detroit, and it's a big bronze Baphomet monument real soon. And, we're not talking about a little small statue. We're talking a 1-ton, 9-foot-tall monument that reportedly pays homage to Satan. And they also got one actually in the Oklahoma in their state capital, which is really scary. Because when something pops out like that, and I don't know about what you guys think of it, but to me, this is Satan coming out and saying, oh yeah, I own Detroit now. And I know Detroit's really gone downhill because of the bad management from the governor who's trying to destroy Michigan. But man, to have a 9-foot statue Satan there, well, that, didn't give me really, really warm fuzzies. So I put together this little prayer, and I'm going to read it to you, okay? Because you can actually direct it to all those Satan Baphomet statues. So we want all veils of invisibility around this to be removed so people can actually see and have an inspiration to stop it from going up. Now let them, and to do it in a way where it's removed from public view. Now we're going to place it in a bubble of mirror with the violet flame added to it to transmute any energy coming from it. We now put it in a bubble of divine invisibility so it cannot be seen nor worshipped by the dark ones who misuse energy. So be it. So I put that out on Facebook, and within maybe about a half hour, Spirit told me to go on my Twitter page, which I really don't do very often, but I did. And these wahoos, the Satanic Temple of Detroit chapter, tried to put me on their Twitter list. Like, oh, no, you didn't. Well, I immediately did the block, and oh my God, they just inspired me to create a cheer for them. And I really hope you will join me in this cheer. And this goes out to the Satanic Temple of the Detroit chapter and the Oklahoma chapter and anybody, you satanic people. Okay, are you ready? This is a cheer I created just for you guys. Okay, here we go. And you can join in if you want. Give me an F. Give me a U. Give me a C. Give me a K. Second word. Give me a Y. Give me a O. Give me a U. And what does that spell? I can't say that on air. I'll really get into trouble. But, I can actually spell it and get away with it. Anyway, if you ever think about it, imagine the statue being in this bubble of mirror that contains its energy, so it has no forward movement. Well, this is, once again, the Bohemian Grove Week, where all the leaders of all over the countries get together at Bohemian Grove in California to do whatever they do, talk about plans for their new world order. They do rituals, whatever. It's usually black magicians, guys. So I want you to join me in this power prayer I wrote, Cutting the Black Magicians, the Illuminati, Skull and Bones from All Bohemian Grove Magic. So if you would join me, I want you to sit down, put your feet flat on the floor, put your hands on your lap like you're going to receive. Now feel yourself connect to the Creator and feel all that high divine energy just come pouring into the top of your head. Feel it pour through your body, flow down your arms, out your hands, and imagine that we're going to form this big bubble of light. And in this bubble of light, we're going to put this power prayer to cut the black magicians from all Bohemian Grove magic. All right, let there be light in the name of the presence of God, which I am, through the magnetic power, the sacred fire invested in me, I command. We called to Michael the Archangel to cut all ties to all black magic done 1 week before and 1 week after the Bohemian gathering, as well as anything done during the week, that week. We cut ties to all elementals they may misuse, including all gods, goddesses, or any deity, violet flaming them to clean up all out of balance energies, angel light energy to heal. Now we connect all these elementals back to the Creator, commanding them to be neutral or only emitting love. We cut ties to all these satanic magicians and their apprentices have between each other and all oaths, vows, or rituals they may have taken together to give them more power. We cut all ties to any energy coming from their group work. See all ties, binds, blood oaths, and bee swarm mentality being cut between these individual groups and anyone trying to create a new world order, including ETs, reptilians, Nordic reptilian hybrids, Satan, Lucifer, and all their seed, the Nephilim, Greys, Illuminati, and their seed, any satanic magician and their secret societies they have created to keep them in power. As all ties are cut, see their energy coming off each other and any of the projects and programs binding them. We see all their plans and projects falling apart. We cut the ties to the goddess Athena and her owl, reversing all dark spells that hold the female energy in bondage, including the Mother Earth. We cut ties to all meanings between the symbol of the owl and the reptilian race it represents. We are cutting ties and cancel clearing all magic ceremonies and rituals done in front of the owl statue, neutralizing all magic. We cut all ties to the god and goddesses of chaos and war or any dark entity they may be trying to invoke. See any dark energy spirits that are wandering around the planet they allowed in or out of body to be cut from the earth plane and anything they have bonded to. We tie and bind them, putting them through the violet flame to clean them up and send them back to the divine, filling those empty spaces up with an angel of peace. We cut the ties to any black satanic magician that is using any ritual or symbol to rent the veils to other dimension. Open any stargates, time portals. I'm not finished. Can you just hold on a minute?
Hello?
Where we are? We call the violet flame through these portals to clean them up, fill the portals up with divine energy, close and seal them forever. Now we cut ties to all their misuse of any sacred symbol. We anchor the violet flame in that symbol to keep its energy from being misused, and see all the symbols being reversed every time they use them, including the Nazi swastika. I call the higher selves of all the participating in any Bohemian Grove ceremony to step forward into the light, cut all ties, Michael the Archangel and Shiva to unbalance, fear of women, patriarchy, genocide, rape, pillage, plunder, incest, greed, power, gladiator mentality, military war, Midas right mentality from their energy field, cells, atoms, molecules, all the way down to their DNA, going backwards and forwards through all their incarnations. As this energy is released, I call the violet flame through them and all their works that are misdirected, cut all ties to all black art and negative ceremonies that are being done in any will to manipulate humanity and the earth for greed and profit. As it's released, I call the divine male, female, human God consciousness into the reptilian part of the brain. They now will have compassion, kindness, along with a great desire to give their wealth back to the poor. For those who do not choose to share their wealth, we cut all ties to their money energy sources, sending that energy back to the Creator to clean it up and back to all the people they have taken from, including cleaning up the planet. We cut all ties they have to Atlantis, Hitler manifesting the Fourth Reich and New World Order. We see Michael the Archangel taking his sword and chopping all these plans to pieces, giving them no more forward movement. We see all their plans falling apart, all of them, including the NDAA, CISPA, and the Patriot Act, to name a few. We anchor the violet flame in the heart of the Bohemian Grove, letting it spread to cover all the grounds and everyone that steps on these grounds, neutralizing all black magic and dark thought forms. As their dark plans fall apart, the golden age of divine enlightenment manifests. So be it. So we're going to fill it up with light and love. And let's take a deep breath and release it. Whew. Well, I just had to get that in there. Now, for all you activists out there, I want to share with you really quickly before we bring Chad on, is Saul Alinsky's 12 Rules for Radicals. So you might want to write some of these down, okay? Now, who was Saul Alinsky? Well, he was an American community organizer, and he was the founder of community organizations, and many communities really didn't start winning the fight until they started following his rules. So I'm going to read them through real quick, and then at another time we'll actually stop and discuss them. Okay, so rule number 1, power is not only what you have, but what the enemy thinks you have. Power is derived from 2 main sources, money and people. Have-nots must build power from flesh and blood. These are 2 things which there is plentiful supply. Government and corporations always have a difficult time appealing to people, and usually do so almost exclusively with economic arguments. Rule 2, never go outside the expertise of your people. It results in confusion, fear, and retreat. Feeling secure adds to the backbone of anyone. Organizations under attack wonder why radicals don't address the real issues. This is why. They avoid things with which they have no knowledge. Rule number 3, whenever possible, go outside the expertise of the enemy. Look for ways to increase insecurity, anxiety, and uncertainty. This happens all the time. Watch how many organizations under attack are blindsided by seemingly irrelevant arguments that they are then forced to address. Rule number 4, make the enemy live up to its own book of rules. If the rule is that every letter gets a reply, send 30,000 letters. You can kill them with this because no one can possibly obey all their own rules. Now, this is a serious rule. The besieged entity's very credibility and reputation is at stake, because if activists catch it lying or not living up to its commitments, they can continue to chip away at the damage. Rule number 5, ridicule is man's most potent weapon. There is no defense. It's irrational. It's infuriating. It also works as a key pressure point to force the enemy into conclusions. Pretty crude, rude, and mean, huh? They want to create anger and fear. Rule number 6, a good tactic is one your people enjoy. They'll keep doing it without urging and come back to do more. They're doing their thing and will even suggest better ones. Radical activists in this sense are no different than any other human being. We will all avoid unfun activities, but we will revel at and enjoy the ones that work and bring results. Rule 7, a tactic that drags on too long becomes a drag. Don't become old news. Even radical activists get bored. So to keep them excited and involved, organizers are constantly coming up with new tactics. Rule number 8, keep the pressure on. Never let up. Keep trying new things to keep the opposition off balance. As the opposition masters one approach, hit them from the flank with something new. Attack, attack, attack from all sides, never giving the reeling organization a chance to rest, regroup, recover, and re-strategize. Rule 9, the threat is usually more terrifying than the thing itself. Imagination and ego can dream up many more consequences than any activist. Perception is reality. Large organizations always prepare a worst-case scenario. Something may be furthest from the activist's mind. The upshot is that the organization will expend enormous time and energy creating in its own collective mind the duress of conclusions. The possibilities can easily poison the mind and result in demoralization. Number 10, if you push a negative hard enough, it will push through and become a positive. Violence from the other side can win the public to your side because the public sympathizes with the underdogs. Unions use this tactic peacefully but loudly. Demonstrations during the heyday of unions in the early to mid-20th century incurred management's wrath, often in the form of violence that eventually brought public sympathy to their side. Rule 11, the price of a successful attack is a constructive alternative. Never let the enemy score points because you're caught without a solution to the problem. Old saw, if you're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem. Activist organizations have an agenda, and their strategy is to hold a place at the table, to be given a forum to wield their power. So they have to have a compromise solution. Rule 12, pick the target, freeze it, personalize it, and polarize it. Cut off the support network and isolate the target from sympathy. Go after people and not institutions. People hurt faster than institutions. You know, this is really cruel but effective. Direct, personalized criticism and ridicule works. Now that's Saul Alinsky's 12 Rules for Radicals. So be sociable and share it because, you know, he's got a lot of good information in there and a lot of things activists really need to use and at least think about the possibilities of it. And, you know, in the very end, where it says direct personalized criticism and ridicule works, they do that to activists all the time, man, and they get away with it. You know, they call it just destroying the activists. Well, anyway, these are his rules, and I'm just sharing them with you, and I offer them up for your consideration to use however you can. And for all those activists out there, you know, go for it, guys, and be successful. Well, should we try to drag Chad on? Do 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 do. Okay, I guess I got 5 more minutes because he's going to wait until 10:30. The other thing I wanted to share with you that around September 23rd, 24th, there's rumors that there's going to be another end of the world rapture. And I call this number 5 or 6. Okay. So obviously they're not really successful in making these calls. I just wanted to give you a heads up because if anybody says the word rapture, just go cancel clear. Not going to happen. And, don't sell your house. Don't sell your car. Don't quit your job. Now, there's supposed to be an energy shift, but it's not going to be the end of the world. I think I've got time to share with you quickly some military programs and recruitment methods that they're doing in the schools. Now, I'm going to give you some various programs and recruiting methods that the Department of Defense. Oh, there he is. Okay, well, I'll have to leave this for next week. Chad, are you there?
Mm-hmm.
Was that a yes? Well, he was gone. Okay, can he call back? All right, Chad, are you on? I don't hear anything.
He called, but the call dropped, and I was just sending him a message to let him know that he was on when his call dropped. So call back in, Chad, please.
Do-do-do-do, do-do, 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 do-do. So when Chad comes on, and I've had him on before, and he's very, very cool. He's a UFO abductee. He understands paranormal experiences. He does astrological counseling, understands quantum physics, astrology, and he wrote a book called The Giant Rock, and it's based on his uncle. And I guess his uncle was one of the very first people to actually channel UFOs. Well, hi, Chad. How are you? Hello?
Hello? Hello?
I can hear you.
No.
But can you hear me?
Hi.
Hi, Chad. We can hear you.
Hello? Okay.
Liz, hello.
Okay, let's see here. I'm on now?
Yes.
Can you hear me? Okay. Hold on.
Can you hear me?
Wait, that stopped. Okay.
All right. Do you hear us? Like me? Hello? Oh, I love live radio. I say that almost every week, don't I?
Can you hear now?
Yeah, I can hear you.
No.
Can you hear me?
Okay, let me try this. Let me try it again.
Okay. Oh, I really should get some show tunes for this. And then I won't have to sing, huh? Anyway, thank you for Chad. Can you hear me?
I can't hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
I can hear you.
Yes, we're together.
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Okay. I called him and added him to the group. I'm going to mute now since we can hear you and you can hear us. I'm going to mute and let the show continue.
All right. May the show go on.
Let it go on.
Well, welcome to the show, Chad. I was just giving everybody a little bit of background, but since you are here, tell us about yourself.
Okay. Well, I live in Ensenada, Mexico, and I live with my wife and a couple of dogs. And I'm trying to get off this. Too many phones here. Excuse me. Gosh. Okay. Yeah, I'm here. I'm overlooking the coast, the beautiful sunset here. I tell
Yeah,
you,
you have a lot of phones, huh?
I have
Um,
about 4 phones. I mean, it's unbelievable. Right now, there's been about 3 people calling, and I just like, please stop calling. Here, I'll put the ringer down. I guess that's what we'll do.
that would be awesome. Maybe you can
Sorry.
disconnect it. What a concept.
I know. Okay. Yeah. Anyways, I'm here looking, like I said, here on the wonderful show tonight with you. And I am the nephew of George Van Tassel, who is the leader of the UFO experiencer / contactee movement, which has led into the national UFO disclosure. That's what they were doing it back then. And I grew up at a place called Giant Rock, which is a 8-story freestanding boulder that several people used to live in, including a man named Frank Kreitzer. My uncle lived there. I used to play there as a kid during the 60s, and it was a great and wonderful place to live and grow up. And it was a UFO hotspot where there were a lot of abductions going on out there. Not only myself, but cousins and other folks out there, and a lot of sightings. And even today, it still is a very interesting place. So yeah, and I've just finished my book. It's called Giant Rock, obviously, and it kind of details a lot of the events that occurred from 1930 all the way up until let's call it 73, 74. And so it's based on real events. I took dramatic license on it. But essentially what I did was I combined the original screenplay that we were going to do for a movie, we still are, and I combined it with the sequel. And so now we have one book. It's on Kindle. You can get it for $4.99. Shameless plug. The book's doing very well. We're really excited, and we're moving towards doing some movie stuff. Got some interesting contacts. So that's a little bit of a snapshot about me.
Well, let's talk about, you mentioned you were abducted. How old were you when you were abducted?
Well, I was a small child, and during the time period, I've done a little bit of research. Most of the abductions that have occurred in this country were during the late 50s and early 60s. And then there was a huge drop-off for some reason. I've heard all kinds of explanation. But I was 4 years old when the first one occurred. And it was the notorious Greys who teleported me through a window into their ship. They did their various medical experiments, put some steel objects, all the way through me, probed every orifice that I had, and told me that I wasn't going to remember it, and the experience, and that I would be fine the next day, which they lied. I remembered it in vivid detail. I have kind of an eidetic memory, and so I have a tendency to remember every nuance of every picture of every event, and that's continued even to my adulthood. So it wasn't a pleasant experience. People say I'd like to meet a UFO. I would prefer to meet them now versus back then, because it's so foreign, and it's such a traumatic shock to the psyche because it's so out of the norm. You don't want to go through that. After that, I had several attempts that they'd tried to abduct me. I believe that they did, but I don't remember those. I do remember a time period, and it's in the book, where they tried to grab me off a swing set, and I hung on for dear life, and they kept on telepathically telling me to let go, and I wouldn't. And they finally gave up. But these occurred till age 10. And then after that, I didn't have any more.
Okay, let's go back. You were only 4. I mean,
yes.
And being traumatic, and I mean, how can you really remember or even observe? I would really like to know is, what did your uncle think about the abductions?
Well, I never told him. I never told him. My uncle, I never told him. In fact, I didn't tell anybody about them for fear of what might happen to me if I did that. And I also, in my own mind back then, I kept on wishing that if I didn't bring attention to it, that it would somehow go away. And that was how I dealt with it until in my teens, when I talked with my sisters and brothers, about it. It was just kind of something I didn't chat. Now, my uncle knew that something was going on by the way I was acting and some of the other effects. I went into a real stuttering phase where I could not complete a sentence. So he knew what was going on, and he would continually ask. And he was this extraordinary, intuitive, psychic person. He would relentlessly ask me, but I wouldn't. I just didn't want to discuss it with him.
Well, you were 4 years old, and oh my God, in trauma, and who knows what they told you when you were abducted, and not, they put the fear of aliens into you, so you wouldn't say anything. I mean, how easy is it to scare a child?
Well, the whole event was extraordinary. I've kind of gone backwards, and I thought, okay, you always think, well, you hope that things don't occur to you or your children and what have you. But, upon reflection, and like a lot of things in my life, and of course, this is me being a mature adult, with some experience and having a grasp of all of this stuff, I'm okay with it now. But for years, I didn't tell my wife until it was 2 years after I was married to her about these things. I wouldn't tell her because, you just simply during the time period. Also, I wouldn't tell people that my uncle was George Van Tassel. Now, here was this great national person who was on television. And, God, there'd be crowds of 10 to 15. At one time, there's 15,000 people out there. A very popular guy, in fact, revered. In fact, all those people, Art Bell, George Norrie, all of them, he's revered within the whole UFO. But I didn't want anyone. I was so fixated trying to be normal and trying to be integrated in society, and did not want to be set apart. I mean, which was extraordinary, difficult thing to do. But that was my main goal. I was not interested in letting anyone know. And surprising enough, there are literally, there's a guesstimate, and they don't know the exact number, but if they extrapolated something at 4 million abductions. And they're real good at doing the same thing, either through, psychic terror, through embarrassment, or whatever, of keeping it under wraps and in this kind of a cognitive dissonance where people just don't want to be aware or recall that stuff. And there are several examples, and people say, well, how is that possible? And it's a great question. How is that possible that all these people were actually abducted? Well, I can point to a lot of things, even today. Bill Cosby. It's a terrible example, but it's contemporary. Bill Cosby allegedly, had been with 50, whatever, or maybe even 100 by drugging him. And it's just now, after all these years, that these women are coming forward. And not only, remembering it, and they're not out for money. They're not out for anything. They're not. There's nothing to be famous about it. But I think for their own selves, they had to come out for almost a cathartic reason to get it out. And this goes in the same line of Christopher Columbus when he first came in the islands of the Caribbean. The indigenous people, the ship was right next to it, but it was so out of their realm of reality. They just didn't want to even look out there. So, it's not unprecedented.
Well, I think they couldn't actually see the ships because they couldn't conceive of it. They couldn't picture it in their minds. They never saw it before.
You know, that's exactly right. And, you know, I've kind of thought, okay, you always get into the why me's and why is this happening to me, et cetera, et cetera. And really, I think it really comes down to, I mean, one, I have an eidetic memory, which means, you know, I remember these forms, but also I think it has to do with the earlier you are exposed to this stuff. I think that what most people do is with their whole pineal gland is they shut it down as they grow older and mature, which is, you know, as some of the listeners probably know, it's kind of this third psychic eye that, you know, that we all had in other existences or even now. But I think mine was a little bit more, mine was less closed because I was just by sheer shock. And since then, I've probably had about 20, I haven't had any abductions since 10 or any attempted ones, but I've had about 27 sightings, and I've had 2 this year. I just have a knack for being aware of them.
Now, did your sisters and brothers, were they abducted too?
Well, we don't know. We know, they have missing time period. They don't have any vivid memories, but they have missing time period because we all did out in the desert where, in fact, my younger sister, she ended up in a refrigerator and literally almost died. And her and my brother did. They don't know how they got inside of this refrigerator that was about a half a mile away, and actually it's in the story too. And I had these loud voices yelling at me in my ear, and I must have been 6 or 7, and I had these loud voices yelling in my ears, telling me that I need to go in this direction because we were completely freaked out because we had no way of knowing where they were at, and out in the desert in a remote area. You can imagine the panic of my mother and father and everyone. I mean, it was a full-blown crisis. But it turned out they were in a refrigerator, inside a refrigerator, and I had these loud screaming voices, and I was directed, and I opened that refrigerator that was out in back of an older house, and no one was there, and they fell out, and no one knew how they got in there. And
that's really creepy.
It was. So, you know, we've had these experiences. Mine are more vivid. My sister, my mother, we had a flyover by a very colorful, large UFO at night, and it was amazing because at that time, my mother had no, she thought it was all. She had the religion thing going and all that stuff, and she just thought that was all something else. And of course, she was extraordinarily negative towards my uncle because you got to remember the time too. You know, you have this, guy who's 50 years ahead of his time. You know, espousing certain beliefs about UFOs, extraterrestrials, free energy, you name it, and he was a lot to handle. You know, for the immediate family members who were, they were back. My family they were backward, and and this whole, religious thing. You have this guy talking about. They thought he was a madman, and so after that occurred, my mother never said a bad word about my Uncle George, and he never said anything. It was like she swallowed a bug about this whole issue as far as that goes. So it was really kind of extraordinary. So yeah,
probably scared her. Well, I need to ask you another question, and I know you were only 4. Did anybody notice a change in you, like you had different psychic abilities? All of a sudden you have the gift of math,
Yes. Yeah, they did notice that, and from that time on, I would fall into parallel universes. I mean, I literally would be in a almost continual state of I don't know what it would be, but I would literally be in parallel universes. I would come up with some very extraordinary premonitions about various people. My grandmother had died, and I actually had seen her, and I had a conversation with her. So So all these different kind of things that normally you wouldn't experience, I was experiencing it. And yeah.
Did you find that maybe there was an implant in your body?
Could have been. I have since had, full body scanned, and if nothing has been found. But also too, I mean, the scans that occurred 30 years afterwards, and I don't know what had happened, on that. But there was no metal objects or anything like that, that was implanted in me. Yeah.
And why I'm asking is because my ex-husband, when he was 17, him and his girlfriend, and we're from Michigan, we're in the in the middle of Michigan, and UFOs were all over the place, and they ended up seeing one, and they lost 2-3 hours out of their lives. They didn't know where they were. Now, what was the result with them? They both became nymphomaniacs. Okay, they messed with that part of their body. And Gary became a brilliant tool and die engineer. And he could do things most normal people couldn't. Now, did he have the heart to go with it? Yeah, I don't think so.
But it was given to him, yeah, sure.
It was, and he actually had this little thing in the back of his neck that around the full moon, it would get bigger. And then it would, reside a little bit, but the
whole sexuality thing. I mean, it was that occurred for me also. I mean, there was something that was extraordinary. I mean, it was. I was continually, aroused sexually, so I did have that whole thing, and I knew it was abnormal. I mean, but I never at the time. You got to remember, I had two conflicting, philosophies. I had my uncle's philosophy, which actually has turned out to be quite accurate. And then I had my mother's philosophy that equated everything like that as evil. And so consequently, I was really kind of, my whole sexuality thing was really screwed up as far as, as far as that stuff goes. But it was extraordinary. I mean, it was something that, but yeah, I get that part. Now, and some of the things, I mean, some of my behavior was, I would go from one, and it's in part social too, because I would swing trying to grasp on some sort of religious foundation in fear of this other aspect that I didn't really, grasp. It wasn't like I was, peacefully walking down the road with this stuff. I was struggling with it. I was struggling with the whole aspects of this thing here, and it wasn't like, oh, okay, yeah, I have these, these psychic powers. I mean, I can tell you so many times as far as where I hear these voices telling me precisely, and they continue today, where literally I could be standing, in an area, say, oh, somebody's breaking your car, you better get back there. And I'll get that, or that person will be over here, and that person said he's going to meet you over there. Well, he's not going to be there, and I could literally be there. So as far as the whole quantum universe, I mean, I'm neck deep in it. I mean, as far as that stuff goes. So, but I was having to deal with it in the conflict of saying, okay, looking at them as gifts. For me, at the time, I looked at them as curses because I was so hung up on wanting to live a normal life, which was not available to me. Now I embrace it. I can write stories about it. I can talk about some of the events. It's very easy for me now. It's almost cathartic. But back then, it was a little bit more difficult. Cathy?
We've lost Cathy. Let me call her back. I don't know what happened. Very interesting conversation. I've thoroughly been enjoying it.
Okay. Cathy, come back, honey.
Oh, this is the first time I've lost her in a few shows. It keeps ringing. Well, let's try it again.
No answer?
No.
Yeah.
She's probably panicking.
Don't panic, Cathy.
Just when you think everything's rolling along really well, a call drops. I'll send her a Skype message. Yeah, I think I am going to have to find some music to play at assorted times like this.
Are we live? We're not live, are we?
We are right now. She dropped off. We didn't. That's
okay.
Why. So where are you located now, or can you say?
Oh, I'm in Ensenada, Mexico, which is about 80 miles south of San Diego. I live on the coast, and it's a beautiful place and beautiful community, very safe. I'm here with my dogs, horses, cats, wife, everything. It's really nice. We like living. And if I have to go up to Hollywood or L.A., it's a quick trip. And so, but yet I can live in more of a sane place. 310. Where are you? Are you in L.A.?
Oh, no. I'm in the middle of Kentucky.
Oh, good. Okay.
Where I live, we don't get a whole lot of UFO sightings.
No?
They seem to come in spurts. We had one here a couple of years ago that we couldn't explain. Very strange. By the time I got out there, the most of the excitement was over. But it was like one glowing orb, and then smaller orbs came out of it and zoomed off in one direction, and then the giant one kind of faded out, and then it came back and it took off in the opposite direction.
Wow. It's pretty exciting.
It was more exciting than anything else. Neither one of us were scared at all.
Now it's different now, with some of the technology and some of the space technology that I know exists now. It's hard to tell whether it's theirs or ours. And I believe that we have some of the technology. I believe we're out there traveling ourselves through this, shadow government. So
I think so too, because I saw something very strange coming home from work one night several years ago. I had a car with a sunroof. And it was about 11:30 at night, and I was coming home, and this triangular craft, fairly low to the ground, flew over the top of my car, and it had a light in each point of the triangle. And I just pulled off on the side of the road and watched it, and I think maybe it was ours.
Oh, wow. Well, it could have been. This could have very well been. I just look up right now. I mean, they're just, especially if they're faster than a jet, and if they move erratically up in the sky, then they're just UFOs to me. I mean, I've seen one over the bay here, about a year and a half ago. It just moseyed on top of the little bay here, and then it stopped. And then it kind of leaned a little bit, and all of a sudden it shot up in the sky. I think that was extraterrestrial. I don't think that was one of ours. But then I've seen others that just kind of that just are blazing across the sky at ungodly speed, and they're too fast for an airplane, and just too fast for an airplane or satellite or anything like that. You know what they are. So it's really, really interesting. Hey, Carol, come grab this phone. While I was on the air, Rhonda and Simoine called on this phone here. It's okay, don't worry about it. Actually, we're trying to get the other person on. So yeah.
So we're just filling in time.
We're just filling in time. Yeah. We're having a chat here. Yeah. So are you the producer? Is that who you are?
Uh, for lack of a better term, yes, I'm the producer.
Okay. Now you know where Paducah is?
Yes, I do.
Oh, okay. All right.
My daughter lives, well, she used to live straight down from Paducah, about 45 minutes to an hour.
Okay. Yeah, I used to drive through Paducah on the way from Misery to Florida. So we would go. Yeah, we would go through Paducah, and in fact, I spent the night there one time. You know, as far as that, but yeah, we had a.
Oh, it's break time. It'll be about 5 minutes and we'll be back on. So you can just wait and
All
hopefully
right.
Kathy will come back on during the commercials.
Okay,
All right.
she's
There we
back.
go.
Oh,
Now I can hear.
can you hear everything now?
Yes.
All right,
Can
I'm
you?
going to shut my echoing microphone off and let you two get back to it.
Wow. Wow. They knocked me off. They knocked me off of Skype. Skype didn't want to work. I'm telling you, Chad, what we must be talking about must be important, huh?
There, you know what? That's that's what I was thinking. You know, either that or I thought you might have climbed on top or down a volcano over there in Hawaii or something. Couldn't get good reception. So,
Well, we can cross that one off the list. Let me remind the powers that be about karma. And, you know, it really sucks to be you right now. What goes around comes around. And I'll bet you all your mechanical equipment, electrical equipment is falling apart as we speak.
you know, it's like this. Their time is pretty close to being up, and it's an amazing thing. It'll be interesting to see the transformation. Some people are not going to be happy, but trust me, people with good clean conscience are going to do fine. But there are some people out there that are not going to be having a good time.
Well, that's their issue, not mine right
Yeah.
now.
No. Yep.
I mean, I'm just getting into this. You know, leave me alone, guys. So you're really going to piss me off, and I'll bring Chad back on, and we'll talk more about it. Okay, how's that one?
No.
Push me. Yeah, I'm a Leo.
There you go.
Okay, so when you were 4, you actually remember these really troll, nasty grays. So
Yeah.
after that, did you actually see any extraterrestrials in physical form?
No, I didn't, and that's the difficult part of a lot of my experience because I knew I had missing time. There were huge missing time periods. Of course, we were out in the desert, and you know it was our old playground. But literally, you know, you'd be gone 5 or 6 hours, and so that's not a really good thing to do. And I couldn't explain where I was and what have you. And there were other instances where I would actually would end up, you know, 4 or 5 miles away, and there's no way I could have gotten over there. So there were all these very interesting circumstances and missing time period that I know that I must have been somewhere, but I just don't remember it. And I don't recall.
Now, I'm going to play devil's advocate because,
Sure.
you know, if you were kind of close to your uncle, correct?
Yes.
Okay, there is no way in hell that he didn't know about what was going on with you. Now, he may have asked you the question on, you know, what's going on to get your point of view to see what you remembered. But, I mean, he had to have gotten known when you disappeared
Well,
for 4 or 5 hours, you know?
Absolutely, and he did know. The thing about it is our mother kind of sheltered us away, and you know, it was kind of like she was always lurking around trying, you know, as far as being able to spend a lot of individual time. But there's another factor too. He was extraordinarily busy. He was flying coast to coast. He was on he was on a continual speaking tour, and he was in and out of their whole thing. And the other thing too is there were usually a ton of people out there, you know, especially out the Rock. And out at the Integratron, he was a very, very busy guy. And the place that we lived, one place we lived 3 miles away, and then we lived at my grandmother's house, which was close to the Integratron or the space travel, the dome. And but he was a busy guy. I mean, anytime you go out to rock, there would be a flood of people around him. And so that was a whole different, element of that. But he was cognizant and aware of a lot of things that were going on. And he literally, I mean, he would tell me, he says, I know. And I would just kind of say, no. And so that was just how it was. And, and as far as the whole events and things like that during the time period, they were happening a lot. And it wasn't just me. It was happening to his own grandchildren, my cousins, who are actually my second cousins, who are my age. And they were happening to other people also. So it wasn't uncommon, So, yeah. Oh, I lost you again. Nope, come back. I've known her. In fact, I'm an astrologer. I actually looked at her chart, and it was really kind of fun looking at that. So I know her a little bit better than most. So yeah, and I did her show about a year ago. So we're just kind of coming back. I got the book out now. I'm so happy finally gotten that thing. It's a good read. It's like 244 pages. It goes quick. It reads like a movie. You'll get the visuals. There's a lot of content. I mean, it's very, very, very exciting. It's kind of and my uncle, a lot of things too. And my uncle, he was one of the there she is.
Hi, they knocked me off again. Buggers. I'm getting pissed. Let me just say this while I can. You must be new, whoever's doing this, and let me remind you of the law of karma. What goes around comes around, and I have already gone to the karmic board and asked if it's for your highest good that you get a karmic return now of over 100,000-fold, that it be returned to you now, then let it be done, and they said it's a good idea. So that means everything you touch after this is going to fall apart. And I'm going to call to the rats, mice, bugs, fleas, the centipedes, the spiders, the bees, to all infest your equipment. And a little bit of, mold, dust, and all your computer stuff. And then you're going to see me in your dreams, and I'm going to look awesome. But, when you think I'm pretty, my hair is going to shapeshift and they're going to turn into snakes. I'm going to set the snakes out after you and they're going to bite you. And the venom is going to make you turn human. So, it's so strong that all your generations backwards and forwards, hundreds of thousands of years, are going to turn human. So I advise you to leave me alone, okay? Okay. I'm good, Chad.
Okay, good. Let's rock and roll, baby.
Okay. So when they cut us off, you were talking about something that started with an I, the integrator.
Oh, the Integratron. Yeah. Yeah. That my uncle spent about 18 years in putting this thing together, and it's still out there right now. And people, celebrities, everyone still comes from really all over the world to take a sound bath in it. And a weird thing, you talk about weird energy going on in there. It's so beautiful and it's so calming, and literally it just frees up any kind of interference as far as psychic transmission and things like that. And let me bring up a point. This just happened recently, so I always love recent things that happen. The guy who I have an associate producer in Hollywood, and we're always out looking, foraging for capital to do the film, because that we think it'll have the biggest impact. We think this thing will be huge, so that's why we continually look for funds to do the film. Well, the guy who had filmed Roswell with Martin Sheen was out in the Integratron. It was meditating out there inside of it, and my associate producer did not know this gentleman. And so the minute he got home, my associate producer sent him an email and had said, listen, I represent Chad C. Meek. We'd like to do something to see if we can make a movie. We loved your movie Roswell with Martin Sheen, with what you did with that, and you're in the genre, and et cetera, et cetera. And the guy says, what are you guys doing? Are you following me? did you guys take my, he was serious. He thought that my associate producer had taken his license plate and followed him to his house. He was completely freaked out because he couldn't understand that kind of serendipity, as far as with that, but he was just there. And when he got home, he gets his email from my associate producer. So a lot of weird stuff happens out there, but it's a really, I used to play in that thing when I was a kid, and all this stuff was so over my head, Cathy. I mean, my gosh. I mean, I could barely read and write, and I'm literally seeing, real time quantum physics. Things are just going, I mean, just exploding around me, and I'm trying to grasp. I'm literally, you talk about a learning curve. And at the same time, again, I mentioned we have this conflicting, type thing of, oh, this is evil, UFOs are evil, et cetera, et cetera. And incidentally, I pound the crap out of a lot of people who are doing I use the word, let me see, what would be a great word. It's mind, and it has something, kind of a filthy word, but that actually occurred to me of some of the religious people when they got wind that I was acting differently, and that they felt the evil forces were basically out there too, and under the guise of good and proper. So and the things, the probative questions that they would continually ask me, I never knew where they would get that kind of questioning. They would ask. I mean, these are religious people that were asking me things of a sexual nature, and it was so weird and so conflicting out there. I like I said, I had to write a book to get well, because some of that stuff's going on in my head. Because why would you ask me that? And you get all this whole various configuring questions and probative questions. Think, well, why would they ask a little kid that kind of thing? So there was a real battle in many respects out there of going on. There was the movement, and the movement out there was like it is now, which it's really important for people to know they're amongst us right now. They've been around forever. I mean, they mask the verbiage in the Bible with fallen angels. Hello, what are they? They fell out of the sky. What are they? Could they be aliens? I don't know. Heck, let's just call them fallen angel aliens. I mean, as far as to have some sort of that. But there's this whole thing that people are just ignoring, and some of the answers to our world's problems are really going to be answered through them. And I know that there are, and you just have to remember this too, there are negative, there are, even with it's funny, I've never been a big looker of the reptilian race and all the other stuff, and I've had to bone up because I've never had any personal experience that I know of with the reptilians. But there are actually, there's reported there are some better reptilians than others, So I guess, and just like various alien races, which there are thousands of them, there are better races or brands of aliens than others. So and we just have to kind of, but there are a lot of good aliens that are very cognizant of what's going on. Vis-a-vis whenever there's any nuclear explosions, we have hundreds of sightings of people coming here and trying to do remedial work with the various parallel universes and things like that. So there's a lot of things, like everything within a cell. I mean, there's all these positive, negative. It takes this holistic thing there, but ignoring all that stuff is not going to help anybody evolve. And I think that, and especially with some of the more, let's talk about more angelic aliens, there's a lot we can learn, and a lot that we, or let me say, a lot that we could remember. So,
what do you think about is being said that there was a group of reptilian race that was actually on the planet before we were created, the humans were created as a race? And, they never did like us very much, still don't. And that they're the original beings
Sure.
of the planet, and they've actually gone underground.
I think that's probably accurate. I mean, there seems to be a lot of information and evidence, but it's not only them. I think that, going in, who knows how far back that they can go, billions of years? I don't know. But there have been documented cases of multiple civilizations that we right now are finding out that were here, as especially in India, 20,000 years ago. I mean, we have the historical artifacts that are popping up all the time. So it really comes down to getting to that. If you can, what do I think? I think it's highly probable. And and what do I think about them? I've heard some very bizarre stories that literally that they are actually lustful for human consumption. That there are some that are actually consuming humans. So, but I don't know. I don't have any experience personally with them, and so I can only relay what I read about them.
Well, let me ask you, you've got children?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Are you afraid, or I don't want to use the word afraid, concerned about them being abducted?
Me and my son in one day, we saw the same ship twice. In fact, I even argued again with him about we're coming from Las Vegas to Utah to Salt Lake, and we were driving up, and we saw this, he had saw this silver ship pass by, and I looked at it, and I go, oh, no, that's not. And I looked at it, I said, oh, yes, it is. So he'd actually picked it up. And then we seen it come back on the other side of the mountain, and it was the same ship, and it was much closer, and it definitely was one. And that ship followed us up, and I got about 2 blocks away, and my son was asleep, and I saw it again, and I just didn't want him to. I didn't want to wake him up, as far as that. So yeah, I mean, I worried about that because I thought that they would try to follow suit and find out what the species is up to and what have you, or whatever brand that I am, that they're studying or of interest. But yeah, I definitely have had that concern. But now they're old. They're too old to abduct. My daughter's 33 and my son's 35. So,
Oh, okay. God, you sound young, darling.
you know what? I'm actually my children are much older. But yeah, but between you and me, I'll tell you my age. Let me see. Last May 3rd, I turned 57. So yeah,
awesome.
Yeah.
So I turned 62 on Friday. So there.
Okay.
And I bet you we look really good too. So I don't mind saying what it is.
It's great. Yeah.
Now let me ask you a question about your kids. Do you see them with any special psychic gifts that could have been the result of your abduction?
No, not really. I mean, they're very, 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 very normal as far as with that respect. In fact, my son, he's worked in the technology field, and now he actually works for Warner Brothers. And my daughter's a very good stay-at-home mom, and pretty much is, her just a great mom, and great people. So. Yeah, it didn't go to them, and I often wondered about it. As far as psychic ability, I think it kind of stopped at me. Yeah.
You know what? I have to, when I look at my ex-husband's kids, which includes mine, just at any of their psychic abilities, and I don't really know any of them to be really out there, if you know what I mean. Now, my one son is very gifted in the martial arts. Matter of fact, he's the #1 blue belt jiu-jitsu middleweight this year, winner, champion.
Wow.
I get to brag. He gets to do the fighting. I get to brag, right? That's what moms are for.
Yes, you should brag.
But I also knew that when I carried him, I called him Little Hercules. So he had this incredible gift, but I don't see any of the kids being a tool and die mathematician or, going toward that direction that my ex-husband had, that kind of technical knowledge, I think stopped with him also.
Well, one thing, there's a huge difference between me and my brothers and sisters as far as, well, and I mean, and it's known. I mean, I do a lot of interesting things. I have a sense of knowing. I know, I ran very large oil and gas companies and mining, and so as far as anything technical and figuring out how to, not only how to manage people, how to get, work with equipment, et cetera, conceptually. I did my own engineering, I did my own geology, did my own land work, whatever I needed to do, I would do it. And people would ask, well, how can you do all those things? I said, well, it's because I can. And they said, well, what is your formal education, with that thing? I started an oil and gas company with a phone by my bed in Colorado. And I just knew that I could do it, and so, it's like, people, and so I get, there's a little bit of suspicion about some of the things, but I've had that going on, since a very early age. For instance, as an example, my wife had 4 children before we had got married, and I didn't have any fear at all. I knew I could manage. I knew I could, I knew I could feed them, clothe them, give them a good lifestyle, et cetera. And then Carol and I had 2 more. And everyone would look at me as suspicious. And it seems like I've always been way ahead of the track on a lot of different things. And they were just kind of gifts. Now, incidentally, I have to, qualify some of the stuff. This is from a person who, I mean, I couldn't actually read any or comprehend what I was reading until I was about 15. And then something started to occur very quickly in my brain, and then I was actually I took the naval entrance test and aced it. And I could do anything from I could enter their nuclear program as far as that. So there's a lot of weird stuff, and I always thought people were lying to me when I came back with test results and say, oh, by the way, you can do anything you want. And I go, what? There's got to be some mistake. But when I would take tests, I would intuitively know what to do with that. Now, I taught myself everything in metaphysics, from astrology to all of this stuff, and it's just something that's just come naturally to me. So from that respect, I'm so different than my brothers and sisters who are more mundane. My older brother's a heating and air conditioning guy. My younger brother had he had worked as a bartender, pretty much very, very conventional people, and no one has ever done any things that I've done, and had experienced as much as I've experienced, and I don't have any explanation for it. So I think it had to do with some of the abduction or the exposure to it. Could have been just sheer trauma too. I mean, you could
I have my ex-husband to, compare. I think whatever they did, they enhanced and they messed with you and they put you in trauma. And the kind of trauma you went through, I kind of compare it to somebody who went through severe satanic when they were young. And, they want to also suppress that.
Sure. And it's very confusing when you talk about, satanic ritual and things like that. And it really is, because I often wonder, it can be very, very confusing between the two, with some of these issues that come up. But yeah, I get it. It's the same thing. I was so traumatized by these events. And the other thing too is, I think that what had occurred was, I think I came to the conclusion that if this happens to me, then anything is possible. I mean, you really get that brought home to you, that literally anything is entirely possible, and that and so I think that's what I said. Well, heck, if I'm talking, if I've been abducted, then there must be so much more out there than people realize. And I think if you embrace that, like I have done, and not let it, destroy me. And listen, it's not been easy, but it's something I've just adhered to and just said, hey, listen, I'm going to move forward.
Let's say you did the best, you're doing the best out of a really crappy situation.
Well, I think so. But, I also, too, on the flip side, I would not be talking to Cathy, from Hawaii if I didn't have these experiences I've had. Just think about the horizons and the things that I've had, I've traveled all over the world. I owned zinc and silver mines in former Bosnia and Srebrenica. I basically, I had a 400,000 acre concession in Honduras for oil and gas. I own gold mines up in Alaska. So, these kind of things they've been extraordinary, but it's been extraordinary from the very beginning. And the threshold of stuff that I have to do, like, for instance, I've hiked most of the 14,000-foot peaks in Colorado. I've ran marathons, and some of these things that I have to do, like, for instance, I'm not trying to do a documentary about this. I'm going after a feature film. I've written a book. My family doesn't do this kind of stuff, and so the threshold of, I guess, achievement for me is the bar is so high from my experience that I have to keep my mind active. Otherwise, I think I would have ran into problems with, perhaps alcohol or drugs or some other, unhealthy or not very positive way. Instead, I chose to take this into a positive realm and challenge myself and continually raise that bar, and I've done that. But I think it's also internally from a psychological thing, is that normal things don't do it for me. I guess that's the point I'm trying to get. Whereas for others, they may be a lot more satisfied with having a regular job, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But it never did it for me. So.
Well, you remind me, and, correct me if I'm wrong, but I call that being an awakened, conscious, spiritual being that has unlimited potential.
Well, that's one thing I've been trying to express to a lot of people, because most people tell me what they can't do or what they can't have. And for me, it doesn't register in my head, and it never has. And I would get into my mother. You talk about a battle as far as battle of wills. My mother would say, you're a dreamer, and et cetera, et cetera. And she says, well, you just need to get a job at a post office or something like that. And then after I started doing it, she would go in conniptions fits because she couldn't figure out how I was doing it, because I believed I could do it, and in my mind I couldn't see why I couldn't do it, why I couldn't do these things. So, but when I talk to people who have, there's this whole universe out there. We live in a very, very a very interesting place where everything is available to you. But the thing about it is you actually have to take the initiative and believe and work hard to get it. It's not going to be given to you on a silver platter, and if it was, it would mean nothing to you. And it's a part of the process, and being part of the battle, and being engaged in life, and having to suffer, and that's something that's ingrained in me naturally. And that's why I don't fear failure. I don't fear, somebody saying, "Oh, you can't do this," or et cetera, et cetera. I don't. That means nothing to me. That makes me want to work even harder. So I use it. I use the energy correctly. Yeah.
I would say it's don't tell me I can't do it, because then watch me do it.
I'll do it. Yeah. Please tell me you can't do it. Right.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Tell me I'll never do it. Oh, done,
Right.
Okay, you are into astrology and into metaphysics. What's the connection, and why did you go off into astrology?
Well, I was trying to always figure out I'd look across the street, and there'd be the kid of the dentist, and he would have this very traditional life, or at least what my perception was. And I was thinking, well, why don't I have that life? And why are things why have things been so traumatic and why are things so difficult? I had to figure out. I had a thirst to figure out why I was experiencing what I was experiencing, because I couldn't get my hands around it, because I looked at it like I was being more or less persecuted. And I wanted to know why, what's the difference as far as this? And, and overall, the main thing that I've actually learned by all of this has been is being able to how to learn with and live in my own skin, which is, it's still, it's a daily chore to do that, but I've learned how to do that. And that's part of the process. As far as when you get into metaphysics, you start looking outward instead of basically, again, pitting yourself or whatever. You look outward as far as this various things, and that's what got me. Now, I'll give you a little story. I went to, and this is why I got into metaphysics. Me and two other friends, we went to the United Parcel Service, okay? And I was 6'3", very, very strong, and I went with two very short friends of mine, okay? And we all went. They needed work over in the City of Industry. They need workers to, to work. So we all went there. A lot of job openings. They got hired. I didn't. I could not for the life of me figure out why I didn't get hired. Well, they retired. Both of them retired from that. Okay, they got very secure lifestyles, and they retired. That was their life. That wasn't my life. And that's what metaphysics got for me, is it showed me what my life was and what it could be, and that it wasn't supposed to be like everyone else's. That I, for some reason, growing up with the whole Leave It to Beaver, Fathers Knows Best television I grew up with, was telegraphing to me that this is the way it should be. And I got a bunch of crappy information from this, from the television that was erroneous for me. And so that's what metaphysics did for me. It showed me where I was in my own lifetime. And listen, I mean, growing up was very traumatic. I had, several events, but I had great visions also, with some of this stuff. One of which is I literally was so distraught, I tried, I attempted to take my own life. And so I made the cellular wall. I was unconscious, and, God, the creation that had pulled me out. And he sat me in front of this massive cellular wall with all different blinking lights. And I got the whole vision of the whole universe as far as where I was, and this is at 12 years old, and he showed me where I was, which was at the bottom. And then he showed me this nice, colorful light, which was far up. He says, until you get to there, you're not to do anything that will jeopardize your life. He says, and so a lot was laid out to me then as far as that whole thing. So, but again, part of it was part of my life also with metaphysics. It allows me to do service for others. It allows me to help people. Allows me to give. I use them as oracles to, to peek a little bit into the organic chemistry of another human being, so I can be of service in some way, to maybe give them some very carefully timed advice to help them move forward, et cetera, et cetera. So it's been really good, and I've enjoyed it, but I've worked at it too. Rather than going to bars, when I was working in a different town order, I'd stand in bookstores and libraries and voraciously read everything I possibly could consume on that. And it's a daily discipline, and it's a practice I still continue. But it's very positive as far as for your mind. And so that's kind of how that's primarily the reason and this is why I continue. Yeah.
Well, let's get back to your book, The Giant Rock. Now, your uncle, you said he was pretty famous, and he had a lot of movie stars hang around him, yeah?
Yeah, he did. He had a lot of...
Can you name a few? Let's name drop.
Name drop, people Debbie Reynolds was out there, Engelbert Humperdinck, a person that people may or may not know, a man named L. Ron Hubbard of the Church of Scientology. He was out at the Rock. And so was another gentleman named Jack Parsons. And it's funny when you talk about some of the evil stuff that's out there, which Jack Parsons, they actually named a moon crater after him. He also was the founder of the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, JPL, who actually is the reason that our space program is where it's at, was this man named Jack Parsons. And he used to He was a devotee of a person named Aleister Crowley. So when you talk about some of the UFO,
Oh,
it gets
well,
weird. It
well,
gets
it
weird.
makes you wonder. I'm sorry, but it makes you wonder what else your uncle was into if this is
Well,
the kind of people he drew to him
and
that hung
and
out with him.
absolutely. Listen, I mean, this is something too. I mean, you know, there were several things about my uncle. He was profoundly brilliant, but he was a womanizer. And literally, I mean, if you were a woman within a 50-mile proximity, the chances of his magical ways is that you would be sleeping with the guy. So the guy,
I call
yeah,
that a predator.
absolutely. I mean, he had such charm and magnetism that he was so disarming. And actually, that's what I bring in the book. I don't. I show him how he was, and you know, a real human being that with a lot of not only complicated, but very I don't know, base on some things. He was no saint by any means as far as that, but the things he was able to accomplish were extraordinary. And the friends he hung around with, Howard Hughes was out there. So one thing about Giant Rock, and this is what I emphasize in the book, I kind of showed that, I mean, there was so much interest even from Washington, D.C. about this freestanding boulder. It was almost a crossroads from a lot of different people and a lot of different philosophies that were trying to, you know, not only reach, you know, extraterrestrials. My uncle was the original space channeler. He would have channeling sessions down inside the rock, and so there was a lot of weird stuff drawn out there by this man. And
I know you were real small, but did you ever get to, you know, go to any of his channelings?
No. It was off limits. You know, that was every Friday night, and I was tucked away way in bed, and the kids just stayed away from it as far as that. But that occurred, that went on, and he got a lot of information, some of which was very positive. One of the Washington D.C. flyover in '52. He was you know, he sent out telegrams to everyone. Eisenhower, Truman, Eisenhower, everybody in the military, the Life magazine, the International Tribune. I mean, you name it. He sent out telegrams saying, the space people have told me that the above ground nuclear testing should stop now because it's destroying your Earth, and it's also destroying parallel universes. Well, this is the wildest thing. But anyway, so he sent telegrams, and he says, to prove what I'm saying, and people can go on the internet and they can actually look at this thing as far as the flight over the saucers swarm over Washington, D.C. It occurred exactly when he said it was going to happen. He was then put on America's Most Dangerous Persons list because they were very fearful of his ability to channel and talk and communicate with extraterrestrials. So the story is very intriguing. It's intense. It's not just, and so I was this partial witness, you know, as far as this. And one of the reasons I wanted to do it and get it out fairly, you know, soon is because the story needs to be told and not forgotten. And I had access to all the old people like Gabriel Green that was out there, and some of the other participants to get the inside of some of this stuff. And it's in the book and it'll be in the movie. But this is when truth is stranger than fiction type of thing, and it's really it bodes well for science fiction movie and novel. It really does. But this stuff, a lot of this stuff is based on real actual events that occurred. Another man that was even more the Frank Kreitzer, he actually was the first original person that was out there, and he was out there by himself, and he was a metaphysical giant that could do amazing things. Everyone thought he was completely crazy, but my uncle had backed him in 1930 and actually set him up, and he had went out to Giant Rock based on a vision. He was from Germany. He was a merchant seaman, but he had a vision that he was to go out here to Giant Rock, and came into his gas station in 1930 And my uncle and his uncle actually backed him in Santa Monica, and they became fast friends. And then my uncle started going out there. Well, this Frank Kreitzer guy was able to do so many things, including survive out in the middle of the desert. And he was a follower of Nikola Tesla, which, and he also was a follower of Dr. Rudolf Steiner. And so he was extraordinary and taught my uncle a lot of different things where during the war and during the aerospace, my uncle he'd already had a pilot's license, and he was already very adept at a lot of the new technology out there, and he moved up very quickly. But then after Kreitzer was killed out inside the rock in 41, my uncle kept on going out there with the family, and then in 47 he just stopped everything in Century City and with all the various aircraft companies, and lived out there full time, and started doing a lot of the various research and in both metaphysics and ufology and things like that. And that thing all blossomed. The giant rock experience occurred out in the middle of nowhere, in a time that you would not think that would be even remotely possible. So the dynamite, he was so dynamic, about this, and he was on a Long John Neville show with Jackie Gleason and all these various celebrities on a weekly basis. Now, Long John Neville's show was the precursor. Larry King took that show over out of New York. It was the top one. It was the precursor to both Coast to Coast. It was kind of an everything all-night show with Long John Neville, who was extraordinarily famous in his own right. But my uncle was a regular on this radio show. So he had a mailing list. He had a newsletter that I guess went to about 150,000 people. And this is during the 50s. And in the 60s, this is a newsletter that would go all over the world. And so these annual conventions would occur. And people from New Zealand, like Captain Bruce Cathy, the who's who out of England, as far as in all ufology, there's all these people there, and they would kind of commune in this area. So I would literally be completely amazed with this gigantic circus that would occur out in the middle of nowhere. This thing had to have been written, and it has to be made in a movie. And I think it's of interest and it should be to everyone on this planet, because this is really where all of this stuff continued after the Roswell incident. This is where it all happened. And, now we're a little bit more sophisticated with the UFO Congress and this and that and, all these various groups and all this stuff. But then back in the day, this was it for 20 or 30 years.
So how do they get a copy of your book?
Kindle, Giant Rock, Kindle. You can just go right up there. And I priced it affordable, so it's $4.99. It's a great read. Yeah, go on Amazon Kindle. Yeah, Giant Rock by Chad C. Meek, right on the cover, and they can purchase the book there. And be interested. And of course, love to hear from everybody, about it. I'm really happy with the material, because I took dramatic license to give continuity, but a lot of this, a big chunk of this stuff are based on real events. And once you start reading it, once you start it, you will not stop reading until you are finished with it. That's what this book is, and those materials, because it's so engrossing, and you want to know what's going to happen next.
And if people want to connect with you to get an astrology chart done,
absolutely, Chad at Giant Rock the Movie. I love seeing and doing charts. It's something that it really intrigues me when I get into this stuff here. I love doing it. So yeah.
Let me ask you a question on charts. If astrology says that somebody is supposed to come into your life at a certain amount of time, and that they never show up,
what happens?
Yeah.
Well, what happens is, and you got to remember, these are oracles too. It's the same thing. You're looking at like for instance, I was able to, my son, he just had a darling baby girl, but I was able to predict the day within 10 minutes of the actual birth. But I have a lot of experience with my son and with my own self. I have a lot of information, so that's always an equation. Sometimes, though, if we're dealing with probabilities, okay, and there might be an 85% probability, and there will be a 50% chance, and that's usually what happens. There's a 15% chance that something didn't work or wasn't supposed to be, or the astrologer couldn't see everything or wasn't allowed to see that. And so that's how you get some miscommunication. We're talking about a combination of science and art here, and the practitioner and the familiarity with the person and the whole, and even where the astrologer is mentally and psychically. That has a big factor in determining how well the reading goes as far as that. I take a lot of time, and it's funny. You're looking at various things. You're looking at about 10 or 11 there's this microorganisms, and it's just a matter of familiarity. The closer I can get with my clients, the better I can serve them. That's just the way it is. Better, so I can move it out. It's not an exact science, but then again, what is? So yeah, I've been able to predict deaths. I mean, I've been spot on deaths, and and there have been a couple times I've been dead wrong. One of my, I've done a lot of work for people in the stock market, traders, business people and things like that. I actually traded funds based on the planetary movement. In fact, right now, I'm looking at some just horrible transits as far as for anything materialistic or stock market based. And I'm literally talking this week. I mean, I'm looking for a major shakeup in the markets that are going to occur beginning around the 23rd, going to go through 27th, 28th, that are going to really upset a lot of popsicle stands as far as that. People that have basically based their whole life and the whole materialist stuff, they're going to get shooken up a little bit here. And but change is good, and people. We're not down here just to be rich, fat, and sassy. I mean, that'd be, I guess, we're down here to experience real life and real emotion, a whole different realm of possibilities as far as this stuff goes.
Well, let me ask you a quick question. September 23rd, 24th, do you have any idea what's supposed to be happening astrologically?
Well, what I look at is, we have the, again, there's the blood moons and the whole, Jewish, jubilees and et cetera, et cetera. I'm actually, if you really want to know what I think is going to happen is, and I've correlated the July 23rd, and we'll see if I'm right about this, is that there's going to be a gigantic financial reset. And so consequently, everyone's going to be shook up worldwide as far as money goes. And then I believe that as an excuse, there's going to be a false flag. It's going to be a huge one, very similar to 9/11, which is controversial, I know. But I really think that they're going to call it a comet that's going to come out of the sky. And I don't think it's going to be a comet coming out of the sky. I actually think that it's going to be deliberate. It's going to be that we're going to see something, and it's going to cause a lot of damage, and that will be the excuse of why the country's $18 trillion in real debt, and there's probably $700-800 trillion worth of derivatives out there that will come cascading down. We just lost $20 trillion worth of wealth in China. So I think there has to be an excuse, just like how it's set up during 9/11. It's interesting to note, too, that the Saturn transit, if you can mark from right now, 2015, you can go 7 or 8 years back to 2008, the last disaster, and then you can go 7 or 8 years back to 2001 when you had the dot-com bust, et cetera, et cetera. These are Saturn transits that are cyclic in nature, and they actually, the one that we're seeing that's coming up in September and is very similar to the 1929. So what I'm telling a lot of my clients, and of course people out there, is that, hey, listen, and that's in part why why, I'm really, really keen on entertainment, because no matter how bad things go, people usually, seek some sort of entertainment at some level.
Oh,
But
we've run out of time. You're going to have to come back on, okay?
Okay.
They pissed me off. Take away our time, we'll bring it back on.
Okay.
But
all right, Cathy. Listen, I'd love to come back.
Thank you. I've really enjoyed talking to you, and I think I would really appreciate it if you could get into the astrological stuff that will be coming up. The next time we talk, we'll have more time on that. So again,
sweetie, I'll definitely come back.
People can get up. There we go. It's over.
Okay.
We're done. Talked ourselves out. Aloha.
Talked ourselves out. All right, aloha.
Motel in town called the Hampton Inn. Make reservations now. Lebanon, Kentucky, Hampton Inn. Go look it up. Find it. I have some non-electric space for RVs to pull your RVs if you want to bring RVs in. That's fine. We have the space for that. But listen, I really hope you come, as it's the station's celebration for the station's family, which is everyone in the sound of my voice. And we want to try to do this every year. Destination Human and myself and several others have spent months preparing the farm to make this a pleasant, informative, fun, and humans just sharing humans, experiencing humans event. Trying to make this the best event possible. And we have nothing to sell, no agendas, just people converging with other people and having a lot of fun. So I hope to see you there. Go to the homepage, www.freedomslips.com, scroll down to the middle, and you will see a very simple link that says